This is the Skeleton Coast, a place where the Atlantic Ocean smashes into a desert so dry that meaningful rain has not fallen in decades. It is easily one of the most hostile environments on Earth, yet 500 meters from the crashing waves, a 2,000-ton steel cargo ship appears to be sailing through the dunes. This is not a mirage or a trick of the light, but a forensic anomaly that is physically present while remaining logically impossible. This ship is not alone either, because from 500-year-old Portuguese warships to modern trawlers, the deserts of Africa and Asia are littered with the remains of navies that died on dry land. The real question is not just what these vessels are doing there, but what geological force is powerful enough to swallow the sea and leave its victims stranded in the sand. The first clue to this mystery surfaced in a forbidden zone, discovered by men who were looking for something else entirely. In 2008, miners for De Beers were working in Namibia's Sperrgebied, a name that translates from German as the Forbidden Zone. This area is a closed diamond field, heavily fenced and guarded because the ground here is literally packed with precious stones. As their bulldozers scraped back the coastal gravel and dug deeper into the earth, the buckets hit something solid that definitely wasn't bedrock. They found dark, preserved wood and a copper ingot, followed quickly by another, and each one was stamped with the trident mark of the Fugger family. These were the German bankers who funded entire empires, and the miners realized they hadn't just found a treasure chest, they had found a ship. What emerged from the sand over the next few years defied belief, including over 2,000 gold and silver coins and tons of elephant ivory. The site yielded bronze cannons and navigational astrolabes, proving this was the Bom Jesus, a Portuguese Indiaman that left Lisbon in 1533. It had been bound for the spice trade before it simply vanished, remaining on the missing list for nearly 5 centuries until the desert gave it back. The hyper-arid air combined with the massive copper cargo to create a sealed, oxygen-free tomb, leaving behind a time capsule frozen on the very day it sank. This discovery created an immediate physical problem, because if the Bom Jesus sank at sea, it shouldn't be buried under meters of gravel, hundreds of meters from the modern shoreline. The easy answer is that the coastline shifted and the ocean retreated, but that explanation just opens a much bigger door. We have to ask what kind of coastline moves that fast, and what that reality means for every other ship that has ever been lost to the waves. The Bom Jesus wasn't a mistake or a fluke, but evidence pointing toward a planet that refuses to hold still. How exactly does a coastline move? The answer is not found in a slow, gentle creep, but in a brutal and mechanical process that never stops. The Namib Desert operates on a massive geological conveyor belt that has been running for millions of years. This cycle begins 1,000 miles inland, high in the mountains, where rivers like the Orange carve through solid rock and grind it into fine sand. That sediment eventually washes west and empties into the Atlantic, where it is caught by the Benguela Current. Think of this current as a deep, cold river flowing within the ocean, acting as the engine for the entire region. It scours the seabed and lifts that ancient river sand, dragging it north along the coast in a relentless march. Once the sand reaches the shore, the wind takes over the heavy lifting. Relentless onshore gusts lift the wet sand from the beaches and hurl it inland, where, grain by grain, it builds dunes that are not merely little hills. These are mountains of sand, reaching over 300 meters high, and they march slowly toward the sea with an unstoppable force. The coastline here is not retreating into the waves. It is being buried alive by the desert. What used to be a sandy beach becomes a vast dune field, while shallow coastal lagoons transform into dry basins filled with gravel. Anything left on that beach, whether a piece of driftwood or a massive vessel, eventually gets swallowed by the shifting landscape. You can see this process happening in fast forward if you look at the wreck of the Edward Bolen. In 1909, this steel-hulled cargo ship, weighing over 2,000 tons, ran aground during a thick fog, striking a sandbar about 100 meters from the shore. Within just 10 days, the wind had piled so much sand around the hull that the crew could walk from the beach to the ship at low tide. The sailors eventually abandoned the vessel, and the diamond miners who later worked the area used the wreck as a makeshift hotel for years. Today, the nearest water is over 400 meters away, leaving the Bolen as a rusted hulk sitting in a sea of dunes, with jackals nesting in its shadow. That transition from a working ship to a desert monument took only a few decades to complete. If you stretch that timeline out, the implications are staggering. If the shore can bury a steel ship in a single century, we have to wonder what happens over 500 years of constant movement. The sand never stops accumulating, layer after layer, and it pushes the line between the ocean and the desert further and further west every day. The Bom Jesus did not sink in the middle of a desert. It sank in a coastal lagoon that simply does not exist anymore because the desert walked over and covered it up. This means the maps we rely on are fundamentally wrong, or at the very least, they are only temporary snapshots of a changing world. The shoreline you see today is just a single frame in a long movie, and the machinery beneath it is always grinding and moving billions of tons of sediment. It is a slow-motion battle between the ocean and the desert, and right now, the desert is winning the fight. While this is a natural process measured in centuries, we have to ask what happens when the change is not slow. What if an entire sea can vanish not in 1,000 years, but in 50 years? To find that answer, you have to leave Africa and look at a modern catastrophe. In 1960, the Aral Sea in Central Asia was the 4th largest lake on the entire planet. It was a true inland ocean, complete with bustling ports and a massive fishing industry that supported thousands of families. Then Soviet engineers made a fateful decision to divert the 2 great rivers that fed the Aral, the Amu Darya and the Sir Darya. They channeled that water into thousands of miles of irrigation canals to grow cotton in the desert, calling the project a victory over nature. Within a single decade, the sea began to die as the water levels plummeted. By the time the 1990s arrived, the sea had lost over half of its total volume and split into separate toxic pools. The water that remained became a concentrated brine of salt and fertilizers, mixed with pesticides washing off those new cotton fields. The fishing fleet died along with the water, leaving dozens of trawlers, barges, and cargo vessels stranded on the newly exposed seabed. These ships now sit in a desert of cracked, salt-encrusted mud where waves used to crash against their hulls. The port city of Moynak once had its docks right on the water, but today, the nearest shoreline is 100 kilometers away. You can stand in the bone-dry heat and look at a rusted fleet tilting on the plain, their propellers aimed at an empty sky that will never see water again. This is not a story of ancient geology or slow shifts over eons, but a man-made environmental collapse that happened within a single human lifetime. We have the satellite photos to prove it. We have eyewitnesses who remember when the docks were full of fish. The Aral Sea proves a terrifying point about the world we live in. A coastline is not a permanent fixture, and a sea is not a fixed feature of the landscape. It can be erased deliberately in the blink of a geological eye. And those Soviet engineers did more than just change an economy. they redrew the map of the world. They created a ghost fleet in a place where water had been present for millions of years. If we can do this knowingly with tractors and concrete, we have to consider what natural climate shifts could have done over 10,000 years. The scale of change possible on this planet is not limited to the edges of the oceans. It can reach deep into the heart of a continent. It can turn the world's fourth largest lake into a chemical desert and leave ships behind as tombstones. This modern disaster reframes the ancient mystery of the Bom Jesus, because it shows that the water itself can disappear and leave everything that sailed on it behind. To see how deep the mystery goes, you have to travel to Abydos, Egypt. 75 kilometers from the Nile River, deep in the scorching desert, archaeologists uncovered 14 massive wooden ships. Each vessel measured between 18 and 23 meters long, and these were clearly built for the open sea. 5,000 years ago, someone carefully placed them in trenches and buried them beneath the sand. The official explanation calls them ritual solar boats meant to carry a pharaoh's soul through the afterlife. But the hulls themselves tell a much more practical story. They are covered in wear marks from ropes, scars from impacts, and evidence of old repairs, which proves these were not ceremonial models built for a tomb. These were working ships that had seen years of hard service. The discovery presents a staggering logistical problem, because hauling 14 large ships 75 kilometers across a waterless desert is an almost unimaginable feat for any ancient civilization. An alternative theory asks a much simpler question. Perhaps the desert simply was not there yet. Geological records confirm a green Sahara period once existed, and it is possible a waterway that has long since vanished once reached this sacred site. The haunting possibility is not that a massive labor force dragged these ships to a tomb, but rather that they sailed them there before the water retreated and left them behind. This reveals the true scale of planetary change, where an entire hydrological network can vanish, leaving nothing but its artifacts stranded in the dunes. These wrecks are not mistakes or anomalies, but instead serve as benchmarks left behind by a planet whose surface never stays static. Coasts retreat, seas dry up, and deserts advance across the map. The real story is not about how the ships arrived, but how quickly the world can change around everything we build. They force us to face one humbling question. If this much can be forgotten in just 5,000 years, we have to wonder what entire civilizations have already been lost to the sand.